I reviewed everything I'd done so far and looked for anything I could change. I had plans to farm Frozen Wasteland tomorrow, but I'd also be heading to one of the rank D dungeons in the city, Goblin King's Abode, at least for a few rounds. I just learned a C-rank defensive skill that most hunters couldn't even use because of its high energy requirement. There shouldn't have been any surprises that might pop up to endanger my life. Along with the rank D Flames of Torment, I didn't think it'd be an issue to clear this 30-floor dungeon. Another thing was the usage of my skills. If I really could cast endlessly, then I needed to use this to my advantage. Arcanist, Sphere of Protection, and Danger Sense were still active. I sat on my old bed, then closed my eyes and activated both Safeguard and Arctic Armor as well. A few minutes passed and I calmed down some more and realized what I might have missed. Frozen Wasteland wasn't as actively cleared as other E-rank dungeons and had a tint of orange. What would happen when it was cleared multiple times in one day? A change would be very noticeable. I looked at my ceiling as I realized how full of mistakes I still was. Today, I would rest. Tomorrow, I would start moving for real. Cohen Anderson sat at the back of a luxurious car as he headed back to his manor. He had a distasteful expression on his face, as if he had just swallowed a bug. There were very few people he hated in this world as he stood above the masses. Noah, the newly awakened hunter he just visited, landed near the top of the list of his most irksome people. It wasn't about whether he was strong or weak. It was his attitude. He looked down on people with such a pathetic attitude. Wanting to lay low and evade danger after awakening to a powerful ability? Distasteful. Anderson believed one should use their own God-given talents to help the other pathetic masses live in this world a little longer.
The strong ruled the weak in this era, and I do not want a weakling in my city,
thought Anderson. Anderson made a phone call.
Revise his danger level. Make it B. He was able to use a defensive skill that would have taken me a few attacks to destroy, and it remained active the whole time I was talking to him. Find out which skill matches the description and gauge his power. He's most likely a naturally awakened individual with an inherent skill that adds a large amount of focus, allowing him to jump over rankings. There was a silence on the other end of the line before a reply came. Yes, sir. He was the only B-rank hunter in Outer Bank X. He held the city's life in his hands. He could do whatever he wanted with nobody batting an eye. The local government could not control him. Nobody else in this city could contend with him. And that was how things would stay. As soon as I got up in the morning, I compiled everything I knew about Cohen Anderson. Besides his unstable attitude, he was the only one in Outer Bank X that held a rank B skill. A few months back, when his team made up of rank C hunters took down the boss of Soleil's castle with half the team getting wiped out, he was lucky enough to receive a rank B skill book from the boss. Bosses rarely drop any skill books or items that were a higher tier than they were. However, this drop rate increased when it involved bosses from high-ranking dungeons. A rank C dungeon was filled with hundreds of beasts of that level, along with a huge boss that earned the title of a Titan. These huge bosses were extremely powerful and had the chance of dropping something that was of a higher rank than the dungeon itself. Anderson was that lucky. He joined the ranks of B-rank hunters and took his position as the top hunter of this city. His team never remained the same over the months, especially since rank C hunters had a high mortality rate from the dangers of Soleil's castle. I knew I would join them a few days from now. I thought over everything and began to move. I hailed a ride and headed down to Frozen Wasteland for the last time. Since they already knew I cleared this, I would clear it a few more times to raise the funds for skills. I spent around 20 minutes for each run yesterday, and it took me less than 2 hours to clear it multiple times and bring in more than $500,000. I figured I'd only need 400 grand to get the skill that I had in mind though. This time around, I was even more efficient. I entered the dungeon and sacrificed the polar bear boss another 3 times, which gave me a multitude of cores and 2 skill books that were worth selling. In less than an hour, I had finished with Frozen Wasteland and gone down to the Central Awakened Center to start the next phase of my plans. The cores and skill books sold for 447 grand, and I went to the skill shop to buy the skill that would allow me to let loose with no reservations. The skill book was behind thick glass. I asked the person at the front desk to open it so I could buy it. This rank C skill was called camouflage. This skill allowed anyone to blend into their surroundings and had to be kept active to keep the person from being seen. Besides extremely rich perverts, not many people use this skill. That was a whole other story. I had to rely on it to keep my movements hidden while I did things that went against the norm. I wasted no time learning the skill and went out of the Awakened Center. I still had my F rank license, and it would allow me to get past any gates, no matter the rank. The gates and guards placed around the dungeon monoliths were there to make sure normal people did not pass through and get themselves killed while trying their luck in a dungeon. Hunters could pass through the gate no matter the rank they held, as long as they had a license, as many of the hunters that congregated around dungeons weren't just there for the purpose of diving. I called a ride and gave directions to head toward Goblin King's abode. Dungeons got progressively harder as the ranks increased. This explained how a rank C dungeon was barely cleared by a rank B hunter surrounded by rank C hunters. Rank D dungeons were also quite difficult for some. Rank D hunters opted to dive in groups of 10, or rank C hunters formed smaller groups to receive more profit. Rank D dungeons were very profitable, but when you had to split the loot between 10 people, the returns were minimal when looking at the dangers you faced. I asked the driver to stop while we were at the center of downtown, where you could take many paths to get to a lot of dungeons. I found the nearest alley and activated camouflage, along with the Arcanist Sphere of Protection and Arctic Armor. I kept Danger Sense active all this time. The rank C skill camouflage could hide a hunter from anyone of that same rank, while the powerful rank B hunters could notice you fairly easily. If someone were keeping tabs on me right now, I'm sure it would not be a B rank hunter, so my movements from now on would have to be hidden. I stepped out into the middle of the street with cars blazing down and people rushing about. Not a single person was able to see anything. A few bumped into me and tilted their heads in confusion to figure out what exactly hit them. As soon as I confirmed the usefulness of camouflage, I rushed toward the direction of Goblin King's abode and arrived there in 20 minutes. This time around, I didn't bother showing my license and just passed through the man-made gates. The rank D guards on each side were none the wiser. None of the hunters clustered inside even looked my way either. This increased my confidence for my new plans. I then looked up at the huge monolith that shone with a blue hue. This dungeon was regularly cleared by rank C and D hunters, being one of the more profitable dungeons because of the special drop that occasionally came out, King's Valor. This item was a full body armor that increased your defense by a wide margin, while not hindering your speed. As rank C items were extremely rare and mostly hoarded by those diving into the only rank C dungeon, this item was one of the hottest pieces of equipment for hunters. Before I went further, I checked my stats. Name, Noah. Occupation, Hunter. Vitality, 70. Focus, blank. Strength, 70. Skills, Fireball, F rank. Proficiency, 98. Heal, F rank. Proficiency, 21. Arctic Armor, E rank. Proficiency, 95. Flames of Torment, D rank. Proficiency, 49. Safeguard, D rank. Proficiency, 15. Danger Sense, D rank. Proficiency, 33. Arcanist Sphere of Protection, C rank. Proficiency, 25. Camouflage, C rank. Proficiency, 3. Equipment, Swift Boots, E rank. I walked toward one of the square doors of the monolith and placed my hand on it. I was ready. In an instant, I was transported to Goblin King's abode. The layouts of high-ranking dungeons became increasingly extravagant. In the Goblin King's abode, the first floor was a lush, overgrown jungle with plants and trees that crowded every corner. Goblins patrolled in groups of 5. They meticulously covered the entire area, The moment one group was attacked, they would blow a loud alarm, summoning the others to that location. Hunter parties who dove into this dungeon had to make sure they had enough damage dealers to take care of at least one of the groups before the other two groups rushed in. If one was ever to find themselves surrounded by 3 groups of goblins, it was time to say goodbye. I looked at the group of goblins just in front of me. The goblins had a layer of green scales on them, and they were over 9 feet tall. 4 of them held clubs and maces, and 1 held a wooden staff. I tested the effectiveness of the rank F fireball that had its proficiency almost at 100, making it on par with rank E skills. The swirling fireball rushed toward one of the goblins and exploded. The goblin slammed back a few feet, but quickly got back up like nothing was wrong. Its green scales were only slightly dented. I was surprised, as I thought fireball might still have some uses in the future. Its fast casting and movement speed would actually be good if I was ever going against things that didn't have such high defenses, like monsters. Still, that wasn't something I looked forward to. The other goblins were almost here though, so I initiated my most offensive skill on hand, Flames of Torment. A line of fire appeared in front of me and moved forward to hit the foremost goblin. There was a pause after the impact before a scream rang out as the line of fire pierced through the goblin. I made a grasping motion to the pillar of flames and moved my hand to the right. The skill followed my command and acted like a whip that moved horizontally and bisected the heads of 2 other goblins. The remaining 2 goblins were frightened to see such quick deaths of their friends and tried to dash away. I didn't give them a chance though. As I moved forward, I quickly commanded the skill to coil around the 2 goblins and burn them to a crisp. This was a method I had begun using after I became familiar with this skill. I didn't have to just use the skill to shoot flames in front of me. As my proficiency rose, I could more easily control the pillar of flames to not only move forward, but also diagonally or horizontally. With enough concentration, I could command the skill to act like a rope to suffocate my enemies in flames. As soon as I finished them off, I heard rustling sounds as another 5 goblins dashed in. I didn't sit still this time around. I flashed them a cold grin and ran toward them. A pillar of flames eerily squirmed in front of me. I controlled and moved Flames of Torment as I liked. It resulted in dying screams from the goblins. Soon enough, there were another 5 burnt monsters on the ground. Their bodies still bubbled from the extreme heat. I had already taken out 2 groups, so there should have been 1 more remaining. I didn't wait for them to come and went toward the screams. I took the last 5 down just as easily as their previous friends. From then on, it was just me who rushed down the floors. I increased the proficiency of my new favorite skill. On a few of the floors, I tested the effectiveness of camouflage against monsters, and the results were spectacular. I could sneak a few feet around them without them noticing a single thing, but if I stayed in one place for just a few seconds too long or went any closer to them, their eyes would shift to where I was. I wasn't sure if it was just sharper senses or stronger noses that alerted them as I neared, but it was fun to run around without being seen. From the 10th floor onward, more goblin archers and mages appeared. They shot arrows, fireballs, lightning, and frost bolts toward me. I had Arctic armor and Arcanist Sphere of Protection active though. It caused the arrows to be reflected away from my body and the spells to simply disappear the moment they came in contact with the transparent sphere around me. All they could see was a small being deflecting and absorbing attacks while I lashed out with a thick pillar of fire that either tightened their bodies to death or blasted their heads apart. Surprising the goblin mages and archers with camouflage was even deadlier, as they couldn't even cast a single spell before they were killed instantly. Adrenaline coursed through me as I watched these D-rank 9 feet tall monsters fall, but I reminded myself that this wasn't what I was aiming for. They were D-rank and they were weak, just like me. I couldn't think too highly of myself. Any random millionaire could buy skills just as strong and cores to easily make someone just as powerful. The change I wanted to bring within myself was to not feel that feeling of cowardice, that feeling of helplessness that I wallowed in for so long. Whatever stood in my way, whether it be human or monster or the largest Titan bosses, I would eventually have to face, I wanted to confront them head on, without fear. I reined in my emotions and rushed down the floors even faster. Within an hour and a half, I had rushed down all 29 floors of the dungeon and stood at the bottom of the last set of stairs that would take me to the boss room. I realized the pain of normal hunters and why most of them only dove into dungeons once or twice at most a day. My pace of rushing down floors while mowing enemies down left and right still required me to spend a few minutes on each floor. Despite having so many floors and monsters, the hunters in the party had to put their lives on the line to kill monsters on each floor, while they rested to recover their energy and heal up. Going through one dungeon could take them 5 hours or more. Being able to endlessly cast my skills was such a huge thing that even now I questioned if it was still real. I went down the steps while I made sure all defensive skills and camouflage were active. I soon arrived in a huge clearing with a small mountain in the middle, though the mountain revealed itself to be a very savage-looking goblin that was almost 20 feet tall. Its skin shined a dark black color that made it very prominent in this clearing. It held no weapons in its hands, and yet its hands alone seemed to be enough to smash anything coming near it. This was the Goblin King. This boss was the killer of many hunters. Its large size and strength quickly weeded out inexperienced hunters from knowledgeable ones. At least 2 rank D knights or 1 rank C knight with the heaviest of armors were required in order to withstand even one of its strikes. One had to hope their team's mages and berserkers were saving up their energy to unleash multiple spells and attacks on this beast. It was the only way to take it down in as little time as possible, or deaths would follow. I was far enough away from the boss, so I thought I wouldn't be detected with camouflage active. I was wrong. Its huge eyes honed in on me the instant I arrived in the clearing. So blending into my surroundings was not enough to evade the senses of this type of monster? And I wasn't sure if this rank D boss could be classified as a titan yet, but its size made me feel like an ant as I had to raise my head just to meet its gaze. I felt my blood pump in my veins as I found myself in a stare down with this goblin more than 3 times my size. I wasn't scared. I looked at this huge beast and I saw my goals. I saw my future. I ran toward the Goblin King. The goblin stood still and didn't make a single sound. A smile broke out on my face, and soon I erupted into laughter. I summoned a long line of flames beside me as I charged toward this humongous goblin. As soon as I got near it, a huge black fist covered the entirety of my sight. My laughter didn't stop as the line of flames also shot out and wrapped around that fist. Then there was a huge impact. The fist's blow felt like the whole world dropped on me. I saw it smash through the sphere that was protecting me and instantly felt myself fly back at a speed I've never experienced before. The goblin hurled me against the wall a moment later. A spherical dent formed as I dropped down to my feet. Not a single hair on my body was harmed. The rank C skill, Arcana Sphere of Protection, was not messing around. The goblin in front of me didn't stay silent anymore as it let out a mournful howl through the huge clearing. Its right fist fell to the ground and had completely detached from its arm. The calmness in its eyes was completely gone as its feet smacked the ground and it jumped toward me. Its remaining good hand reached out toward me as if trying to snuff out a candle. I commanded the cable of flames to twist and form into a disc while I watched this palm crush down on me. The circular line of flames spun at high speeds when the palm landed. There was a horrible squelching sound as flesh and bones were ripped apart. The Goblin King's remaining arm was grotesquely sliced in the middle. Dark red blood gushed out. We were only a few feet apart, and I stared at its furious face as I commanded the spinning line of flames to cut through the goblin's neck. A second passed. With a sickening crunch, the head of the 20-foot-tall monster crashed onto the ground.